If this movie doesn't warm your heart or make your day, I don't even know what to say to you. Okay, everybody, today we're going all the way back to 1976 to look at one of the all-time fun, great, awesome little sports movies ever created in the history of mankind. We are talking about The Bad News Bears. Not the remake, none of that bullshit, but the original. Before we go any further, before we do anything else, once and again, and as always, to the trailer.
There is no limit to what some men will do for money, especially a man like Morris Buttermaker.
No, I really appreciate this. It's just a damn shame that none of the fathers had the time for it. God knows if I wasn't so busy down at City Hall.
You got my check, Whitewood?
Even if it meant coaching an unlikely group called the Bad News Bears. It was a team of superstars like Mike Engelberg, Rudi Stein, Reggie Tower, Ahmad Abdul-Rahim, the incomparable Ogilvie, Timmy Lupus, Kelly Leak, the Aguilar brothers. With a team like this, there is only one way you can go.
Cups and supporters. Gotta be won at all times.
No fair.
Well, either you wear them, get that one. Either you wear them or you don't play.
Walter Matthau is Morris Buttermaker, a man so desperate to make a buck that he did the unforgivable. He put a girl on the team.
Boys, I'd like you to meet your new pitcher, Amanda Whurlitzer.
Rabbit that, punk.
Tatum O'Neal is Amanda, but Amanda is no ordinary girl. And with her help, the Bad News Bears went from totally terrible to just plain bad.
Why don't you do this league a favor? You and the Bears just drop out.
Amanda knew what the Bad News Bears needed. She also knew how to get it.
If I win, you play baseball for the Bears.
And if I win?
Name it.
What if he tries something,
I know an 11-year-old girl who's already on the pill.
Don't ever say that word again.
Oh, well, if it isn't Inga puke.
How'd you like me to stick this bat where the sun never shines, Turner?
Sit on it.
But a little success is a strange thing. Once you taste it, you want more. And from just plain bad, the Bad News Bears climbed up the ladder to become the team that played baseball like it has never been played before. Academy Award winner Walter Matthau is the coach. Academy Award winner Tatum O'Neal is his secret weapon. Together, they turned the Bad News Bears into a team of superstars you will never forget. The Bad News Bears, the incredible story of how a disaster combined with a catastrophe and somehow became the greatest champs who ever played ball.
Okay, this motion picture was directed by Michael Ritchie. Do you know his name? Maybe not, but I'm sure you've seen some of his movies. We are talking about he has been doing stuff like The Island and The Survivors and Semi-Tough and The Candidate and Wildcats with Goldie Hawn way back in the day and Fletch with Mr. Chase himself and of course the sequel, Fletch Lives, and Innocent Blood and Cool Runnings and Diggstown and The Golden Child, not one of Mr. Murphy's better motion pictures, but so Michael Ritchie was out there, made some shit you probably know, made some shit you probably seen, and did a great job here. Let's get going with the cast. Okay, playing Buttermaker, a man with a slight drinking problem. Well, not the real guy, the character. Walter Matthau. Oh my God, all-time legend. Let's kick it. We're talking about he was in The Odd Couple. He was in The Taking of Pelham 1, 2, 3. JFK and The Survivors and Hopscotch and Casey's Shadow and The Sunshine Boys and Koch and House Calls, Dennis the Menace, and Grumpy Old Men, and Grumpier Old Men, and the California Suite. So he was in so many motion pictures that are just fucking legendary. We're talking a career, massive, folks, massive. Playing Roy Turner, a man that I just covered a couple episodes ago, talking about Vic Morrow. Let's hit it. He was in, of course, what I just got done reviewing, Dirty Mary, Crazy Larry. He was also in Humanoids from the Deep, which you all know I'm a freak for, in Blackboard Jungle, in the Twilight Zone movie, in King Creole, and he's on TV in like Police Story, and Combat, and FBI, and Ironside, and Maddox, and Harry O, and The Untouchables. So, man, big career, long career. Goddamn shame what happened to the man. Fucking tragic. Is what it was. Let's keep moving. Playing Bob Whitewood. Ben Piazza. Not a name that might jump out at you, but man, back in the 70s and 80s, his face was on TV like crazy. Let's hit it. We're talking about he was on stuff like Benson, Dynasty, Family Ties, Santa Barbara, and Dallas, and the Waltons, and the Doctors, and the Bionic Woman, and Heart to Heart, and T.J. Hooker, and the A-Team, and St. Elsewhere, whatever. So, you get the idea, folks. It was on a million things, on a million stuff. He was everywhere. Playing Amanda, somebody who had a very early start in the game, next to her big dad and a couple of big giant flicks, Tatum O'Neal. Let's hit it. We're talking about she started off with stuff like Paper Moon and Nickelodeon. And then she went on to like, Little Darlings and International Velvet. And she's been stuff like The Runaways and This Is 40 and Basquiat and Prisoners. So, hey man, you're talking about a career that started out when she was like, 9, 10 fucking years old. Big thing, went on for a while. I think she had some personal issues for a bit. She married John McEnroe, I think. Anyway, but great job in this. Let's keep going. Playing the Immortal, Kelly Leak. And truly, one of my favorites. We're talking Jackie Earle Haley. Let's kick it. He has been in stuff like The Day of the Locusts, and a movie that I love and I will cover at some point or another. I love this movie, Breaking Away, and Doll Man, and Semi-Pro, and come on, Rorschach and The Watchmen, are you fucking kidding me? And Shutter Island, and everybody remembers losing it back in the day. That shit was just, and A Nightmare on Elm Street, the reboot, man, and Parkland, and that whatever of RoboCop, and he was on TV, and The Tick, and Preacher, and Human Target, and he was nominated for a bunch of fucking awards too, because when he kind of made his big splash back on the scene in a movie called Little Children, playing a creepy fucking character, but he was phenomenal in it, and man, that just launched him back into the game. So, it is what it was. Jackie Earle Haley, love that fucking dude. Let's keep going and get to the story. Okay, everybody, we're going to do this in 90 seconds or less. We can keep it short, keep it fast, keep it entertaining, keep it moving, and so we can all get to where we would rather be, the summation. Anyway, you got this city councilman, this guy Whitewood. He has a kid. Kid's not a great athlete. Couldn't get into the local Little League baseball league, but he wants him to be able to play. So, he kind of interjects himself into the situation and assembles, he gets a coach to make a team to put into the hardest, toughest league in the area. And who does he get to do such a thing? Buttermaker, former minor league pitcher, kind of a slouch, kind of a bum, cleaning pools these days, is what it was, but at one time he was a semi-somebody known around town. Buttermaker goes out there and he gets handed this squad of kids that's a collection of the worst athletes that you could humanly find on planet Earth. He's got a little bit of this, a little bit of that, a little bit of everybody. Doesn't make a difference. He starts teaching them. Doesn't really start teaching them. Starts getting drunk all goddamn day while these poor kids are trying to just run around the field and do absolutely nothing. They get stomped in the first game, ain't even funny. And then he kind of pulls his shit together and says, all right, let me start really trying to help these kids, really start to teach these kids. He gets a bright idea. I know, my ex-girlfriend has a daughter. Amanda, she has an arm like a rocket. Gonna get her on the team. He goes, meets, talks to her. Ain't the best situation. Well, is what it is. Then he goes out and says, wait a minute, there's this juvenile delinquent hanging around this goddamn field. Kid's got an arm like a rocket. He'd make a great addition to the team. Adds him to the team. And from there you have, well, I don't want to tell you the end of the story. I don't want to give you too much, but that's the gist of it. Washed up nobody, severe drinking problem, hired by city councilmen to teach a bunch of kids that are not athletically gifted to play baseball in a league that they have no right being in. That's the gist of it. Take it for what it is. Okay, everybody. Now we're at the summation, which is where we all find our most joy. What makes this motion picture legendary? The thing about the Bad News Bears is that it came around at a time and helped launch a genre of movie that was really a juggernaut of its time. Let me explain. Now, in that 75, 76 era, you had a couple of movies that specialized in nobodies becoming somebodies. Those movies that specialized in taking people that were nowhere near in the league of professional athletes, but through heart determination and a bunch of goodwill within the motion picture, they made it to the top. We're talking this was really kicked off by Rocky, obviously, and the Bad News Bears. It spawned a genre for like the next 6 years of tons of motion pictures like that. Tons of them. Like Halloween gave you the slashers. This gave you those feel-good sports movies. After this, you're talking about, you had stuff like The Fish That Saved Pittsburgh. You're talking about, you had stuff like Fast Break. You had the immortal Slap Shot. You had a motion picture that I absolutely love, Breaking Away. All these motion pictures, all within like a 4-year group of each other, just landed all together. And it was those motion pictures that made you feel like I can do it, even if I'm not as good as those guys. Just a little bit of luck, a little bit of hard work, and we can do it too. This motion picture will leave you happy, and it'll leave you rooting. But before I go any farther, let's get the bullshit out of the way. Directing. Solid. Straightforward. Good. That's all you need to know. You didn't need a rocket scientist to direct this motion picture, folks. The story tells itself. It's just the way it is. The writing, dead solid. We're going to get into more about that in a second. And the acting. Man, for a bunch of fucking kids, obviously you're going to get great shit from Walter Matthau. Obviously you're going to get great shit from fucking Vic Morrow. Obviously you're going to get good stuff from Ben Piazza. But the fact that Jackie Earle Haley, the fact that Tatum O'Neal, and that whole cast of kids did such an amazing job. They didn't play kids like you start to see in other areas of motion pictures, or that you've seen on television, where they were trained after every goddamn line to smile or something like that, and you've seen that in too many movies, you've seen that in too many TV shows. Yeah, I'm not taking that. I'm gonna have... And kid actors were just trained to do that all the time, and you've seen too much of it. These kids did not give you that. They played it gritty, they played it dirty, they played it realistic, and it was a breath of fresh air, and every one of those kids on that team fucking just nailed it, and it was great. The grittiness of it. Folks, this was the 1970s. Oh, Jesus, God above, I missed the 1970s. The way that they made motion pictures back then, you will never get it again. Nope, you'll never get it again. Hang that shit out to dry, folks. Those fucking days are over, and it's tragic. The way the kids communicate with each other and deal with each other in this motion picture, it felt like kids back in the day. I know, fuck it, I was there. I'm telling you, when you watch other movies, they're a little bit too much virtuous. They're a little bit too much out there. They're a little bit too much cartoon characters. These kids, fucking, those were kids back in the 70s. It's just the way it was. I'm just telling you. There was all kinds of wisecracks. There was all kinds of fights. There was all kinds of bad behavior. There was all kinds of that stuff. And this movie is loaded with real kids. And one of the things that's going to shock people today that never seen a motion picture from that era or from that time was the overwhelming amount of unpolitical correctness, if I may say. This movie has none of that kind of shit, folks. That has none of this kind of stuff. Those little kids are saying the most racist shit back and forth. They're saying sexist shit back and forth. They're fat shaming back up. They're just being brutal on each other. It's just the way it went. But they were kids back in the day, and without it being overly rammed down your throat or punched in your face, everybody on the team got along. Everybody got by it. Nobody held anything personally, and they were still a little gang amongst themselves, and they were still little brothers in arms. And even with the cracks and the comments and the digs and the dings and all that kind of stuff, they were a team. Things went unspoken. It didn't have to turn into a big statement. It was just a great little time to witness. And another thing that this motion picture touches on in such an amazing way. If you're young and you see it, you don't see it as much. But when you're older and you see it, it jumps out at you. And that is parents and adults interjecting themselves in their own wants and their own needs into the game. And sometimes prioritizing that above the needs of the children. And you see that in this motion picture glaringly from the Buttermaker character, from the Vic Morrow character, where at one point it went from being about kids to being about them. And it became about them needing the win, not about the kids having fun. It became about them wanting to prove something instead of nurturing these kids and helping them be all they can be and letting them grow. And it's a commentary on stuff I've seen too many times. I have a son. He's almost damn near 30 years old now. But I went to the basketball games that he used to play in. I went to the track meets he used to compete in. Seeing all that kind of stuff. It's kind of sad when you see the adults act that way. That's all I have to say. And I'll leave it at that. But as an added attraction, it's very nice to see that separate arc, to see that separate storyline, and to see them, especially one of the characters, see, I didn't tell you in the story, I don't want to ruin too much, but whatever, really rise above and see what he's doing and see what he's becoming and change that around a bit and become more human again. And the final dynamic is the great relationship between the Walter Matthau character and the Amanda Tatum O'Neal character, where she's just looking for a dad and she's just looking for somebody to relate to. And he's afraid of being in that role because basically he's a bum and he knows he's a bum. He knows he's a mess. And he almost pushes her away in ways that's just heartbreaking and sad and brutal. And you can sit there and watch it, but you know he's not doing it to be cruel. He's doing it to look out for the kid in his own sick way. Or maybe not sick way. Call it whatever you want. Folks, get out there and check out the Bad News Bears. Any way you cut it, it's one of the all-time classic sports movies, one of the all-time classic kids movies, one of the all-time classic 70s movies, and it helped usher in a slew of copycat motion pictures spread across all kinds of sports that went on for the next 4 or 5 years. Some were great, some were not, is what it is. And when you're out there looking, final word, watch the original, The Bad News Bears. The second one, Breaking Training, it was amusing enough. You know, it wasn't that bad. You kind of got a little bit of that feeling again, but there was no Matthau, there was no Tatum O'Neal. But, you know, you had Kelly Leak and the boys doing their thing. The third one, when they went to Japan, I was like, you know, Fonzie just jumped the shark on this one, and yeah, no. So stick it to the original one. Don't worry about the remake, as okay as that might have been. Everybody, take care. Be good. Stay out of trouble. Look out for a neighbor. Help a friend. Be kind when you can, always, to a stranger or anybody else. And above all things, under no circumstances, no matter what the ungodly fucking reason, take any bullshit from anybody. Be good. See you soon.